Alrighty, friends. So this week, I really want to talk about internalized ableism. And I also want to talk about how I myself have been trying to actively unlearn my own internalized ableism. The reason why I feel like this topic is so important is because, on one hand, it subjectively kills your spirit. And on the other hand, in a more objective way, when it kills your sense of spirit, it also affects the way that you live your life, the way that you show up. And when you're not able to live your life in a way that's sustainable to you, in a way that makes sense for you, you're not living to your full potential, right? And I find it important to highlight both ends of that spectrum, the subjective, emotional, energetic parts of internalized ableism and how that affects us, but also the very practical, objective side, because I oftentimes find that people are always toiling between the two. And a part of the internalized ableism, as you guys will see, is the habit of almost intellectualizing things too much, objectifying things a little bit too much, to a point where you're suppressing your own human experience, your own human emotions, because you really want to seem like a sane person with a good head on your shoulders. And you almost overcompensate for your emotions and your own neurodivergence by being overly objective and realistic. But how realistic can you be when the fundamental ways that you're living your life is not compatible with how your actual neurology works, with how your nervous system works, right? If you really want to be realistic, if you really want to be that objective, you do have to pay attention to your nervous system, your anxiety, your emotions, and learn how to healthily integrate that, accept that, so that you could thrive, not just survive, not just meet these specific expectations of neuronormative standards. For those of you who may not be familiar with what internalized ableism is, it's when a disabled or neurodivergent person unconsciously absorbs and adopts the negative beliefs, biases, or societal messages about disability, including their own. It's not self-hate in its pure form, but rather the result of constantly being exposed to a world that sees your body, mind, or way of functioning as less than, wrong, broken, or burdensome. And eventually, part of you starts to believe it. Internalized ableism is the internalization of an external narrative that says there is only one right way to be human. And if you deviate from it, you are expected to fix yourself, overcome it, or at the very least, hide it. Healing internalized ableism doesn't mean pretending disability is easy. It means unlearning the idea that your worth is conditional on your ability to blend in, work harder, or make others comfortable. It means learning to see yourself as whole, even in a world that still hasn't caught up. I find that for neurodivergent folks who may be struggling with their own internalized ableism, whether they're conscious of it or not, kind of fall on two ends of the spectrum. And obviously there's going to be a mixture of it in between, but the two ends of the spectrum is those who are not necessarily trying to hold themselves to a neurotypical standard, but they constantly feel a sense of shame for not being able to do so, while also feeling a sense of maybe frustration that the world they have to live in doesn't have an effective place for them to show up and thrive in the ways that they know they may be capable of. And so it's almost like this feeling of lost potential. Like, I can't meet these certain standards. I know I won't ever be able to, and I'm not even going to try. I have a generally good idea of what my strengths are, but the systems around me don't allow me to draw on those strengths and show up in ways that I feel like I could do really good at. On the other hand, I feel like there's a lot of neurodivergent folks that are still bending over backwards to meet those neurotypical standards. They might be pretty sufficient at it, maybe even thrive at it because of how hard they work, but underneath the surface is a very deep sense of shame that they will never realize because of how much pride they take in their own suffering and their own accomplishments. They over-identify with how well they're performing, so much so that they can't even see that they have internalized shame rooted in internalized ableism. But for these people, that sense of self-shame comes out in judgment. They will probably oftentimes find themselves judging other people, especially other neurodivergent people, because those neurodivergent people are either failing in ways that this individual believes they are not allowed to fail and shouldn't fail, or they see other neurodivergent people living a life, maybe even thriving in ways that works with their neurodivergence, and there's almost this sense of jealousy and resentment, right? Like, if I've had to sacrifice so much of myself, my health, my life to meet these specific standards that I take so much pride in, then how can this person who has similarities to me find the same sense of happiness, maybe even accomplishment, but they didn't have to sacrifice themselves for that? And so I think it's really important for us to reflect on who we are and figure out where we lie on this spectrum. More often than not, we'll realize that we've probably went back and forth between the two. I know I have, right? I've been that judgmental, resentful person that over accomplishes for the sake of proving myself to I don't even know who, whether it's other people or myself. But I'm sure if you relate to that experience, you'll know that it's never enough. You will always feel threatened by not being good enough or there being someone better than you. And so you can never rest from that, right? No matter how good you get. Even if you've accomplished the most amazing thing that you will ever objectively accomplish, you don't necessarily feel good about it, even though you might feel prideful about it. But it never really seems to sink in, because where does that sink into? Who is there to actually feel good about it? Because that person's not there. You've effectively suppressed that part of yourself. So how can you feel happy about something when what it took to achieve that thing meant getting rid of the person inside of yourself that would actually reap the benefits of feeling good about themselves for doing so? Because at the end of the day, you're not doing it for yourself. You're doing it to prove something, your worth, your existence to the external world. And sometimes it's not even that, it's just proving yourself, period, you know? And for those of you who may not be sure whether or not you have internalized ableism yourself, I got you. I'm gonna be going over some common thought patterns that one may have regardless of which end of the spectrum they lie on, just because I think sometimes seeing objective examples is helpful for us to figure out where we stand in this whole conversation. In tomorrow's video, I will be going over some thought patterns that someone may have when they lie on the end of the spectrum where there's more guilt and shame. And on the video after that, I will be going over some thought patterns that someone may have when they tend to be overachievers, tend to be very prideful, tend to be very judgmental. And to wrap this whole topic up for this week, I will be talking about ways that I am actively unlearning internalized ableism myself in my own life. I know a lot of the things I talk about can be very intense sometimes. I oftentimes get comments from you guys saying that you have to be in the right headspace or heart space to watch my videos, and it's not something you could tune into all the time. And I know this about me. I've gotten this feedback very, very often from people in my life, so I'm fully aware that I tend to do that. I tend to have that effect on people. Although for a lot of my life, I used to be ashamed of that part of me for not being a fun person to be around. I guess a part of me unlearning my own internalized ableism is accepting that that's a part of myself, that because I am very introspective and I think about these things and these things are so important to me, not everyone is in a place where they're able to handle that. But alas, I've come to a place where I have not only accepted that this is a part of me, but I've actually learned to draw on it as a strength, as something that's unique to me and something that can benefit others. All of this to say, watch these videos this week, and just watch my videos in general with a lot of care for yourself, a lot of intention, and just be gentle with yourself, be understanding, and do what you can to make a difference in your own life, one step at a time. With that being said, make sure you take some time to regulate yourselves, and I will see you guys on the next one. Take care.